Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We're about to start in 1 minute or less. Well, let's start. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, depending on the side of the world you're at right now. Welcome to the 5th session of FNA's CBDC Broadcast. We're really happy you are joining us today for the webinar. As you all know, last month we had guest speakers from Bank of Canada and Bank of England. We had their insights about CBDCs, why, how, and when. In case you missed that episode, you can find the record on FNA's website. For today, we're having Ludmilla Buteau Allien from the Central Bank of Haiti and Adolfo Sarmiento from Central Bank of Uruguay. We all note that there are many motivations for rolling out a CBDC, from achieving higher financial inclusion and higher transactional efficiency to preserving monetary sovereignty by compensating for the declining use of cash and countering new private forms of digital currencies. So today with Ludmilla and Alfonso, we're eager to have a view from Latin American countries about the motivations, challenges, and design choices that could fit their jurisdictions best. So I'm going to present the agenda for today. We're going to have 5 minutes of housekeeping and introductions, which we're doing it right now. Afterwards, we're going to have CBDC's motivations, challenges, and design choices in Latin America, which, as I already mentioned, we're going to have Ludmilla Buteau Allien, Assistant Director of the Department of Money and Economic Analysis from the Bank of the Republic of Haiti, and Dr. Adolfo Sarmiento, Head of Economic Policy from the Central Bank of Uruguay. Please remember that question and answers will be, we're going to address them at the end. So please ask those questions using the chat functionality in Zoom, or you can send us an email if that fits you best. So in the next slide, we're going to have as a brief explanation about what FNA does. FNA is a leader in advanced network analytics and simulation. FNA software is used to uncover hidden connections and anomalies in large, complex data sets, and it's used to predict the impact of stress events and to optimally configure financial systems and infrastructures. FNA is trusted by the world's largest central banks, government authorities, commercial banks, and financial infrastructures. In the next slide, we're going to have one of the most of the benefits that the CBDC simulation solution from FNA is trying to give the market. Those benefits are being able to test different design choices for the CBDCs, understanding CBDC's adoption outcomes related to disintermediation, financial inclusion, and payment behavior, being able to simulate shocks, scenarios, and other stress events, and obviously improving decision-making. So a little description about our speakers today. First, we'll have Ludmilla Buteau Allien, which I already mentioned is Assistant Director of the Department of Money and Economic Analysis at the Central Bank of Haiti. Ludmilla Buteau Allien specializes in applied macroeconomics with a focus on monetary policy. She is also a project manager of the digital currency project in Haiti. Ms. Allien Buteau Allien joined the Central Bank of Haiti in 2006 after a brief stay at the Ministry of Economic and Finance, also serving as advisor to the executive director representing Haiti at the IMF Executive Board. Dr. Adolfo Sarmiento, head of economic policy from the Central Bank of Uruguay, holds a PhD in economics. He's an expert in the financial sector and payment systems, and is currently the head of economic policy at the Central Bank of Uruguay. Dr. Sarmiento also serves as an external advisor on central bank digital currency projects for the International Monetary Fund. So our guest speakers are great to understand that, to have some insights about what a CBDC should be doing, when it should be doing, how it should be doing it for the Latin American case. So let's welcome Ludmilla and Alfonso. Thank you very much for being here. I don't know if you want to start with some comments about yourselves. Ludmilla first, ladies first.
Thank you, Carlos. It was, it's been 16 years, actually, about 2 days ago. It's been 16 years since I've joined the central bank, but between the meantime, I have done a lot of extensive experiences, of which the IMF GPA, which was very informative. But the past 2 years, I have been working at the head of the CBDC project at the central bank, and it's been an enlightening experience. I've met a lot of wonderful companies, great companies, technologies that I never knew actually existed. I've met FNA, exactly. I've met FNA, I've met over 13 technology, either at testing environments, either solution firms or possible consulting firms. And so far, it's been a very good experience. And I really look forward to this webinar this morning.
Thank you, Ludmilla. Adolfo. You're on mute, Adolfo.
Okay. So hi everyone. Thank you to FNA and Carlos for the invitation to be here. It's a pleasure for me. Few words about me. I'm working here at the Central Bank of Uruguay for the last 25 years. So, but from 2016, I've been involved in a CBDC project. We start earlier. I mean, not only doing research, but also trying to implement and to prove some concepts about CBDC implementation. Some of them were very educative for us, because we learned a lot about how our payment system was working and which are the possibilities about to have a CBDC. We are still doing research about it. Maybe we can share something in a few minutes. But having said that, now it's a topic that everybody is on. So what I find that it's more interesting for, in my case, is to interchange, because everybody has something to say about it, and we are everybody in a learning process. So that's my view in this moment. It's a pleasure to be here. And
that's precisely the purpose of this broadcast, to exchange ideas from very dissimilar points of view, even geographically, technologically. So that's the main idea. So thank you both for being here with us today. So we're going to start with the set of questions that we have prepared, like to try to understand what is the view that you both have about CBDCs. So the first one, and if I may, we'll start with Ludmilla first, ladies first once again. The question is like this: can you give us a brief update of the CBDC project in your jurisdiction, mainly the stage of development and the type of CBDC being considered?
Thank you, Carlos. This is a good question. And again, I want to say that this is a pleasure for me to be on this webinar today. So as you know, the Central Bank of Haiti is exploring the CBDC. Our project team so far has done a lot of research before recommending the board to move forward with the project. So considering our main objectives and our current ecosystem, we believe that the retail CBDC and the intermediated approach would be the most suitable for our jurisdiction. Indeed, we do seek a solution that can respond to our current and immediate needs and modernize certainly our current payment ecosystem. So we are on the verge of launching our RFP, which is currently being reviewed by our board.
That's great, thank you. And I think it matches some of the, let's say, of the type of CBDC that we saw last month with Bank of England and Bank of Canada in being an intermediated retail CBDC. So that's interesting. Adolfo, your turn. Thank you.
Yeah, in the case of the Central Bank of Uruguay, we as you know, we did a pilot plan during 2017 and 2018. That first pilot plan was quite simple because it was only with the central bank issuing the CBDC, not with the financial intermediaries. Then COVID-19 arose, and it happens that during 2 years we were attending other priorities here inside the central bank. But after that, we at the end of last year, we restarted with the second stage of this plan, that is to have some intermediaries on board to do a second pilot. And we are involved with talking with the industry, interchanging, and I may say that we are not only talking about CBDC, we are also talking about payment infrastructure, because these two topics, payment infrastructure and CBDC, are not the same, but goes in the same way. And that's what we are involved in now. But having said that, there are many things that are arising about technology, about interconnectedness, some other topics related to CBDC, and at the same time to about payment infrastructure that are on the table now in our research.
That's really interesting, and it's very interesting to find out that you already tested a direct CBDC, which is the one that I understood you did from 2017 to 2018, and now you're going to test something which is intermediated. So it's very nice because you will have like, which is the outcomes of each type of the architecture of the CBDC, and that's obviously very interesting. So going forward to the second question, in both jurisdictions, what are the main motivations for considering a retail CBDC? Are there use cases for retail CBDCs in Haiti and Uruguay already? Ludmilla.
I want to say that the main motivations for the retail CBDC for us is mainly the increasing need for interoperability. And we really need to foster financial inclusion. So we want to do this through the expansion of digital financial services in Haiti. And I believe the best way to do that is via the usage of digital cash. Because to be honest, the informal sector is quite important in the Haitian economy. So having the cash being used a lot and having it put in a digital way will definitely foster, the digital financial services, which is definitely going to be able to reach out to the people in the remote areas, particularly.
That's really interesting, and I would like to do some parallels or comparisons to what we heard last month, and we can see right now that there is already a big difference. Financial inclusion is not a motivation that we saw last month from Bank of Canada or Bank of England. They had other motivations, but in this case we had, as Ludmilla just said, one of the main things is financial inclusion, the expansion of digital financial services, and to have digital cash available for the people. So that's really interesting to highlight. Adolfo.
Yes, we were going in the same way that Ludmilla mentioned. In the case of Uruguay, in 2014, there was a very important law trying to improve financial inclusion. There were many ways that this law was trying to improve financial inclusion, about banks, about other financial intermediaries. At that moment, the central bank said, okay, we want to be part of this policy. And that's the reason why we start with CBDC. At the same time, as I mentioned 1 minute ago, there was improvement of the payment system itself in our mind, because it's part of our responsibilities. But something that we learned in the way when we start with the pilot and we start with discussions with the industry and the like, and with the population itself, that was another motivation, that is to be part of this new technology revolution that is on the financial system. And which is the role of that for a central bank in this new era of fintechs and the like. And we learned that we want to be part of this new paradigm, saying, okay, we have there's a central bank function to give money to the population. Why we give money only in physical bills? Why not we are part of this payment system with CBDC, and serving to the population all the needs that they have to do payments is part of what we see now. So it's a new motivation, was not in the first moment, but it arises and is now on the table as part of the motivation. I have a comment about your comment, Carlos, about other views of other central banks. Maybe for the Bank of Canada, I was discussing this specific issue with them many times. Financial inclusion is not a problem because they have this problem solved. But believe me that when we start discussing and what we want to do, at the end of the road, we are doing more or less the same. They call it universalization of payment, and they see CBDC as part of this universalization process. Okay, that's more or less the same. That is the aim of financial inclusion, because financial inclusion, at the end of the road, once again, want to have a universalization of the means of payment to everybody. So it seems that it's not the specific motivation, because they don't have this problem of financial inclusion, but they are going in the same way. That's my view, obviously, but when you go dig something in the concepts that are behind these levels, more or less we are going in the same direction.
No, and I agree with you. I perhaps they think that's a second order priority for them, in the sense, and I remember that our guest Francisco Rivadeneira from Bank of Canada mentioned that there are some regions in Canada that let's say they don't have that easy access to digital payments, so that CBDC could help to make this universalization you talk about. But I completely agree with you. It's not that it's that financial inclusion is not a topic at all, but it's like not the first one that they would mention. I agree with you, Adolfo, on that, and thank you for the comment. So let's go to the third one. Which are the main expected outcomes of rolling out retail CBDCs? And obviously the other part of the question is, what are the risks related to the rollout of retail CBDCs? Ludmilla.
Women go first, right? Except when it comes to death. So I want to say that the main outcomes for rolling out a retail CBDC are efficiency, inclusion, innovation. We expect SMEs on our end to benefit from this rollout of CBDC, grocery stores, consumers, because then transactions will be more secure, will be faster, and digital, therefore, not require a lot of cash to be carried out, and a lot of cash management costs actually that is associated with it. And we also expect merchants from the informal sector to use the solution to change their financial habits. We want this new payment to lead them closer to the financial sector. And in terms of risks, we really want to say we are looking on mitigating them by mitigating them through training, technical assistance from international partners. We are not yet at the rollout phase though, but we're already working towards anticipating any possible cybersecurity risk. And we are ready for challenges in terms of culture of using cash and other hesitations from any actors in the financial sector. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you very much, Ludmilla. That's a very nice answer. So efficiency, inclusion, safety, lowering cash management costs, changing financial habits from the people, but the risk is to manage cybersecurity and obviously the cultural habits or the cultural features of the people is also a risk that financial education should cope with. Thank you. That's very nice answer to this. Adolfo.
Oh, I'm going in the same way that Ludmilla mentioned, but not to repeat it. Maybe I can highlight some aspect about which are the expected outcomes. Interconnectedness, trying. There is a very interesting discussion about if CBDC competes or complements other electronic means of payment. So my view is that it improves the interconnectedness of the system, at the same time give efficiency, and competition is always good to improve, but at the same time we as we conceive the CBDC, we don't want to compete in everything. So that's the reason why we impose some to handle with that. We impose some limits to the amount that you can manage in our pilot of CBDC. That's more or less something that the improvements that you are given have good reasons, are there for the good reasons and not for the bad reasons. Yeah, something that about efficiency and interconnectedness is on the table every time you discuss it with the private industry. Second issue that was not mentioned at that moment is another outcome that is expected for central banks is information. We don't have information on how people use physical bills. And we can do surveys and the like, but at the end of the day, we don't have a mark to follow each bill during all the payments. And now something incredible that arises from the CBDC pilot plan is a lot of information about what people do in the small payments. So we have a lot to learn, and that's have results not only on payments but also on monetary policy itself. So there's another outcome that maybe it's not the first thing that you think about when you are thinking on CBDC, but it's on the table there. So you have to take account. On the risk side, I completely agree. Cyber risk is the most important, and operational risk itself in a more broad sense is important. But I want to mention something that is crucial for central banks, that what is beyond this is reputational risk, because reputation is crucial for us, because it has to be with credibility of the monetary policy and the like. So that's the reason why we as central bankers are doing pilots. 20 years ago, the central banks, a pilot, an experiment for a central bank was something that nobody really was thinking about, because we are very serious people, and we want in very assurance everything that we do. Why we are in pilots? Why we are researching something? Because and we don't get it into the real world immediately, because we have to learn, because there's a reputational risk that we have to face if we fail. And we have been learning during decades and decades about security of physical bills. But cyber risk is something new. And there's a big risk there. So that's the reason why, in my view, we will be through pilots for many years until we decide, we as a whole, I'm thinking in the whole world, every central bank, finally they decide to, okay, let's go through it. And there's more or less to deal with this risk. We have to learn, we have to research, we have to do pilots, we have to do these discussions.
This is very interesting, Adolfo. Thank you very much, because we already talked about the why, the how, I mean, the structure that we're using, and now you're introducing the when. And we're going to have the next question talking about the when. But before that, I would like to highlight something that you mentioned that it's very interesting. You mentioned two words, interconnectedness and fintech. And this is very interesting because in that view, we will, perhaps CBDC will achieve something which is very difficult, but very valuable for new technologies, which is interoperability between technologies. So perhaps the CBDC, taking into account what you said about interconnectedness, CBDC could achieve their interoperability that would make this fintech and the legacy system to work together in a better manner, more efficiently, more safely. And that's really a really nice idea to have. So let's go to the when. Is there a first mover advantage in rolling out a CBDC? And I think that I will start with Adolfo this time, because Adolfo was mentioning already that central banks are serious people and they will try to have it well, I mean, to have it right. I remember, it's better to have it right than to have it first. So Adolfo.
I don't know, maybe it depends on which is your situation, because there are many issues that pushes a central bank to do that. I may talk about Uruguay. In our case, there was a general policy of financial inclusion. That was the reason why we want to start at that moment. Maybe it was not easy because there was, I remember that only in that moment, Sweden was the one who was researching about it. They come to Uruguay when they know that we decided to issue a pilot plan, and we have a very, very interesting discussion. But you have to learn, and you have 2 or 3 learning tools. One is research, other is this is what we are doing, interchanging. But one way or another, you have to go to a proof of concept that you need to do a pilot. That's our view. So we decided to launch it. Advantages is okay. You're learning in the field what is happening. You learn about what is going right and what is going wrong. So, for example, there's something that is not on the table generally, but for us was very, very interesting. And I think that when everybody was trying to learn something, we realized that it's all about e-wallets. It seems something so specific, but believe me, for the users, at the end of the day, that's what they saw. So this is quite important and the like. So there are a lot of advantages of moving first. On the other side, I may say that for emerging economies, as my country is, it's not good to be the first because you have to learn by yourself something that maybe when other more stronger economies has more developments, you have a lot of things solved. For example, we don't have an international agreement of best practices for CBDC or principles or whatever. So you don't have you don't have a list to, okay, these are the 10 things that you have to do if you want to be succeed in issuing a CBDC and the like. So if you have this, it's better, it's easier. So being the first mover has its advantages, but have its problems itself. That's my view.
Thank you, Adolfo. Very interesting. Ludmilla.
I want to say that on my end, I think that there is probably a first mover advantage, actually, Adolfo, because I have heard from the different governors last week. It was an interesting training put together by CARTAC, and hearing the different governors in the Caribbean last week and talking very comfortably about their experience, what they have seen, and they have the advantage of teaching us so much about this important project, this important change that is occurring, which is CBDC. So on our end, I want to say that we have learned a lot from the first movers, and we're still learning from them, particularly you, Adolfo, because when we first started, all we were looking at were Uruguay's project, Uruguay's pilot report that came out. And we're still doing researches. So we were still doing research until mid-2021 when we really started talking about the Caribbean countries. And seeing their proof of concept really has actually inspired us as well into seeing that, okay, this is how this is gonna go. We have different cultures, we do have different ecosystems, but we do learn a lot from those who have gone before us. But on our end, since we're not first movers, really, I mean, we are going to be among the pioneers, but not necessarily the pioneers. I want to say the benefit is for us because, again, sharing your experience with us and the Caribbean, in the Caribbean, I want to say the Bahamas, Central Bank of Jamaica, the ECCB has shared a lot, and particularly the Bank of Ghana recently. They have shared a lot with us, and this has also helped us move forward in our project.
That's really interesting. And I think that I'm going to highlight the obvious, but I think that there is something that Adolfo mentioned that Ludmilla emphasized, which is there are like 3 stages, and in this order would be research, exchanging ideas, and then to have pilots. But then there will be pilots and exchanging ideas once again and researching again. So it will become like a life cycle feedback process. So it's very interesting. Next question is a neighboring country decision to roll out a CBDC a motivation to fast track your CBDC? Ludmilla, let's go back to you.
Thank you. That actually is a follow-up to the first one. Well, in the case of Haiti, honestly, I would say not so much. I mean, although we are learning from our neighbors, I mean, clearly the Caribbean countries are very close to us, but we believe that each economy is different. Although it looks like we are very similar, but we have a lot of diversity in terms of economic activity, in terms of ecosystem, in terms of culture, although some of it are similar, but some of them are also very diverse. And therefore, we think the appropriate solution to identify problems or challenges cannot be replicated, even within a region. So I want to say we are inspired by their advancements, but they in no way motivate us to fast track our CBDC.
That's great. Thank you, Ludmilla. Adolfo.
In our case, was not really something that was pushing out because we have here, part of the reason is because we have a strong commercial relation with many other countries, not only with our neighbors. Part of the issue itself is that it's because of Uruguay have here in the region its own practices, some different from the rest. But having said that, it's good to have a region where it's going in the same direction, because at the end, neighbors are important. But I think that this issue is more than regional. It depends. Obviously, region is important, but maybe now it's going to a global issue, as I see, and that's good, because it will be a process that we are part of it from the very beginning. So we will be learning together, and that's I think that's good. That's a good issue.
Thank you, Adolfo. That's a very, very nice thing to know. And I just received a question that I'm going to make, which at the end, which has to do with this regional thing that it's headed to you, in fact. So I'll have it. I hope we'll have time to do that, to address that. The next one is, do you think the people of Haiti and Uruguay want and are ready to have access and use a retail CBDC? Ludmilla.
This is a great question, and it's actually one we get all the time, because I actually saw also in the Q&A questions about the financial exclusion, questions about, I want to say, infrastructure shortages. But I want to say that also that at some point we even asked ourselves if we were ready. But the data in Haiti right now tells us a completely different story. The data collected in 2018, for example, we had a FinScope survey, and it showed that mobile payments were being used by over roughly 25% of the population. Again, that was in 2018, 4 years ago. And this was before COVID-19. And during that pandemic, transactions rose to over 90% on most mobile payment platforms, which showed us the need for a more dynamic payment system. And we also looked at our data from our national processor, and it showed us a significant increase in card-based payments. And we believe that this can translate in a higher level of adaptability than we expected. So the consumers, I think, currently are realizing that the future is digital, and the digitalization is going to help us build our own resilience a lot better than we had in the past.
That is really interesting, because it tells a lot about how the adoption could take place for a CBDC. It's a nice proxy. That's really interesting, Ludmilla. Thank you. Adolfo.
Okay, I completely agree with Ludmilla. Two things about it. As I mentioned, we here in Uruguay from 2014, we are in a financial inclusion process. Many aspects of payments that are being encouraged to do it through digital ways. It helped us a lot during COVID-19, but we see the same that Ludmilla mentioned. It's all over, that all the digital payments grow a lot. In that sense, everybody now is more, I don't know which is the right word, familiar maybe with electronic means of payment. But at the same time, there's a cultural change, because money is in our pockets from many generations. So and you know, and that's more or less how I perceive the cultural issue. It's not a thing of black or white. I think that physical means of payment and electronic means of payment, even if we are talking about money, will be at the same time, because the elder people, they're still want to have cash in the pockets, but the younger want to have, they have all their entire lives in a mobile phone, or everything that is important for them. I have sons, so I see it every day. So and there are two ways to function in real life. So we have to combine with this. We have to be responsive with both. So we will go in this direction. I completely agree, but there is a cultural issue that will be there. We have to go, you mentioned, Carlos, through education for everybody. Education about what is the good outcomes for everybody, but education about risk also, and what is new, and how to deal with that. That's more or less as I see. That's part of the cultural change, but having in mind that every cultural change is a process. So I see it as a process.
That's really interesting. And I think that that has with what Ludmilla mentioned is like the process that we should call it, perhaps like the adoption process of digital payments have been pushed forward by COVID.
Yes.
And I think that this will give a very nice ground for a CBDC to be deployed. I think that's the thing.
And for me, this is a confirmation that it's a one-way road. It's not something that we research and we discover. It's a one-way road.
That's really nice to hear, Adolfo. Thank you. So we have still like 8 minutes to be able to have like 10 minutes for Q&As. So I'm going to speed the things a little bit up. So the next question, and let's try to keep it a little bit brief, which is how to balance the delicate trade-off between privacy of transactions and compliance with know your client and anti-money laundering considerations. Ludmilla, let's go first with you again.
Okay, well, to keep it short, I want to say that considering that we're going to use the intermediated approach for our CBDC, we understand the trade-off is not going to be easy, but we're trying to keep the same current ecosystem, first of all, because the population is already comfortable with it, but also because it's going to help us abide by the rules of AML-CFT, so they will still prevail. But we're not going to be looking directly into each transaction, but we are going to be planning and setting ceilings for all CBDC wallets. And that will be different ceilings, different type of wallets, according to level of information that are available to provide, like such as either full or light KYC.
That's very interesting, Ludmilla. Thank you. It has to do a lot with what we have seen in China pilots as well, to have like different type of wallets for different type of people, meaning different reluctance levels to show who you are in the payments. And that's a very interesting way to solve this. Adolfo, thank you.
Being brief, this is one of the biggest discussion with our legal department from the very beginning. Privacy or not. What we see is that at the end of the day, maybe you have to put some layers and layers and layers to keep privacy, but somebody will have the power to get out all these layers and to know exactly what you're doing. It will be complicated and the like. So I return to the legal issue. So it's interesting not only to think about how we will solve it through IT, but also how will we manage it in the legal arena. So who will have the power to get out of these layers to know exactly what you are doing? That's in your legal system, this is judge, whatever. So I think that is something that we have to agree internationally and locally, but with the legal assistance.
That's very interesting, Adolfo. Thank you very much. Now the last question before the Q&As is, should CBDC serve as a complement or a substitute for central banks' physical currency? Are there any functions of cash that are elusive for CBDCs? Ludmilla, once again.
Okay, I want to say definitely a compliment. As Adolfo mentioned before, it is a cultural change. In the country, it's a lot, like cash is very, very meaningful in a lot of cultural ways. And because of our culture, we do not believe that cash will completely disappear. And this is all right. So in terms of functions that are elusive, I want to say I cannot find any sense for us. CBDC will not be another wallet, but simply cash in the digital format. And I have spoken with several central banks with different payment infrastructure and different financial ecosystem. And as they mentioned, each of us should see the CBDC. I mean, it doesn't have to be the same model, it doesn't have to be the same design, and it doesn't have to bring the same. But for us, it's going to be cash in a digital format.
Great, Ludmilla. Thank you. Adolfo.
I completely agree with Ludmilla. That's the same way that we see this issue. Yes, as I mentioned, there's a way to deal with this, putting ceilings to the amount that you manage in CBDC because cash is used for small payments, and that's if you are trying to do the same with CBDC, it's for small payments only. But as I mentioned, we see it more as a complement and not a substitution process. And everybody will be more aimed to have electronic means of payments in general if we as central banks issue CBDC. That's more or less the cultural, the way that we have to do this cultural change.
Thank you, Adolfo. Those are very nice answers to this. I would like to go back to the last question that that Adolfo mentioned, that it's something very interesting about the privacy and the layers of privacy. And it also has to do with what Ludmilla said, that you think that there are like no functions of cash that cannot be fulfilled by the CBDC. And here I have like not a question, but just a comment. I think that perhaps the most difficult function to fulfill for a CBDC is the privacy one. Because as Adolfo mentioned, there could be tens of layers of protection for the privacy of people, but at the end, someone will be able to see what people are doing. But at the end, people right now, and Adolfo were talking about young and old people, young people post all the time where they buy things, what they eat, when they eat it, and we have everything on all young people tend to have everything on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. So it's very interesting to see that some people would like to have their privacy respected, but they make everything public on the other side. So it's a very interesting thing to study at the end from a perhaps not economic or financial, but sociological point of view. So thank you for helping us addressing these questions. Now, right now, we have about 20 questions in the Q&A from the public, and I'm going to try to use like a mix of first in, first out, and to net some things that are rather similar. So I'm going to start with, there are a couple of questions that deal with the same thing, and it has to do with stable coins failure in the last days or weeks. Terra is the one that is being mentioned. What is the effect of this stable coin failure to deliver their stability, and what is the impact on the potential impact on the CBDC projects? Adolfo, let's start with you.
My view is something that maybe is the closest in a more academic way, but it's quite different, because stable coins are still a private active, financial active that maybe is related with something that you may perceive as stable, different from other coins that are quite volatile. But as every other financial asset, it can be volatile also. And that's is quite different from a central bank issuing, because the value of a currency, it depends on other issues, and it is not related if you issue it physically or electronically. And what happened in the FX market will happen anyway if it's not related with what you are doing to issue your money. So in my opinion, very interesting, but are two things that are completely apart. Okay, when you are looking at the money flower, that's very everybody knows about it when we are talking about it. The BIS very seminal paper with the money flower, everything is there, but there are different petals of this flower. We have to have this in mind, because stable coins, okay, the central bank is stable mainly. I hope, hopefully, but it's nothing to do about stable coins. Stable coins, okay, it's another financial assets. That's my view.
Thank you, Adolfo. Ludmilla, you have something to add to this answer?
I want to say that Adolfo is completely right. And if I may link it with the CBDC, I want to say that this crash basically reinforces the need to have a truly reliable digital coin, which is the guarantee that the central bank can actually provide. So, I mean, as a central bank, considering all the risks that we have, operational and reputational risks, security, reliability, and responsibility are those that come with a CBDC. So around this route, I want to say that the advantages of CBDC compared to any other digital coins are clearly better.
Thank you, Ludmilla. This one is headed to Adolfo, which is Uruguay has served as a banking center for Argentinians, especially to avoid inflation and depreciation. Do you think an Uruguayan CBDC would be available to the people from Argentina?
Interesting question. Yes, Uruguay has served as a central banking operation for Argentinians many years ago. Maybe after the 2001 crisis, Argentinians split all over for the rest of the world. So there are not a big issue for Argentinian for Uruguay banking system. That's something that we control and we publish in our website, because it's important for us as a source of risk, because our exposure to Argentina is relevant. So there's not a problem anymore. But having said that, the question is still there, because is a CBDC available for non-residents, Argentinian or whatever? That's the question itself. And I may say, why not? Because that's the way that you are using them. And it's very, very relevant about how you design your CBDC. For example, in our pilot, we issue it through through your mobile phones. So if you have a Uruguayan mobile phone, a Uruguayan number, you can go and have the CBDC. So if you have to check how non-residents have a Uruguayan mobile phone number, but at the end of the day, they can do that. And why not? Other issue is if you are thinking cross-border payments. That's other question that we as central banks are discussing. But let's go to the local CBDC, to the retail CBDC that we are discussing here. Okay, why not? Everybody that has a mobile or whatever, or a token, or it depends on how you implement, how you design your CBDC, can use it.
Thank you, Adolfo. I'm going to raise a question which is directed to you both. What happens if United States adopts a CBDC? Could this help pushing a retail CBDC in the region? I mean, it should be like Latin America, I guess. But Ludmilla, you're closer to the United States, so let's start with you.
Not only am I closer, I have like a lot of cool circulation going on in my economy, actually. Actually, I don't think it would push us to issue a CBDC to interoperate with the digital dollar. Again, it goes back to what Adolfo mentioned in terms of cross-border payments. This is something that we are studying. We're not quite sure what the impact would be yet, but we want to believe that since they are actually moving ahead with several pilots in the US, we want to believe that so far, considering that CBDC is going to be local, it's going to be in the US only. It's not going to go cross-border yet, which is why we talked about the coexistence of cash and the CBDC. So the cash is probably still going to circulate for a while in other countries. But as far as the impact on us, even though I want to say we have a high dollarization rate of deposits, we do think it's not necessarily going to impact us immediately.
Thank you. There are several questions about, and this is for Adolfo, if the results from the Uruguayan pilots are available online. As far as I remember, there are like some working papers about that, right?
Yeah, I share with you. You can check it. It's in our website, in the Central Bank of Uruguay website. I write a couple of papers. One is with it's called 7 Lessons from the e-peso pilot plan. Another is the impacts of the CBDC in the payment system. Both are available, are public, so you can check it.
Okay, yeah, we just put the links in the slides
Yes,
that we're going to share with all the attendants, so that will be fine. We have 2 or 3 minutes left, so I'm going to have perhaps the last one, which is, what are your observations from those CBDCs that are already launched, from China, Bahamas? Well, Jamaica has not been launched, but from those that you know that have been launched, is there any opinion you have? It's a very fussy question, but do you have any opinion of those?
I want to start by saying that this is a very similar question to, I want to say, to Vladimir's as well, who's been asking about why central banks from the region, I think, is it Vladimir? Or no, it's not Vladimir. But there's another attendee who talked about the situation in the region, in the Caribbean region particularly. So if I answer both questions, I want to say that for China, the adoption rate is a bit different. I recently participated in this currency research seminar where I think we got a lot of information on China, and we understood that their adoption rate is quite high. For the Bahamas and the other Caribbean region, I want to say that the adoption rate is a work in progress. It's also a cultural change. And I think this is what we really understood as well, that it's going to be a major shift. It's going to take time. And there are going to be several pilot phases until we get to the adoption rate that we would actually ideally see in the population.
Thank you, Ludmilla. Adolfo, you have the last minute.
Yes. Any case, they are relevant because they are doing it now, so it's relevant anyway. I find some difference. What Caribbean countries are trying to do is to find a way to solve some other financial problems. So it is certain to know if they could solve it. It's because of the regional payments and which is the situation about the flows of money there. Quite different situation is when you are looking to China, because China is quite relevant globally. So I want to know more about how they solve it, about which is the IT solution, because I'm relating to the previous question about the relevance of US CBDC. Even they don't push us to issue a CBDC, but they impose some relevance, how can I say, parameters that we have to check. Because if the US, China, European Union, these big blocks issue a CBDC, they will impose some parameters that you need to fill if you want to be on. So that's the reason. There are not best practices, there are not standards, but if the big economies globally issue a CBDC, they more or less start to impose some standards to the rest. That's my view.
Thank you, Adolfo. Thank you, Ludmilla. We're just 1 minute late, so I'm going to briefly say thank you to you both. It has been a very interesting, enlightening, and lovely conversation about CBDCs. So once again, thank you very much for joining us, and we expect to have you here in the near future. Thank you again, Ludmilla, Adolfo. Have a very nice day, and for everyone else, have a nice day as well.
Thank you, everyone, for being there.
Thank you, everyone.